Well, hello and welcome to the show with me, Jillian. Today, I am delighted to say my guest is Philip Colbert, who is a British contemporary artist, born in Scotland, spent a lot of time in Ireland, just discovered, and who lives and works in London. And you have been called, Philip, the godson of Andy Warhol. Wow. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's quite a funny title. I mean, some people actually take it literally to be the fact that as if I was actually his godson. So and asked me questions like what he gave me for Christmas and stuff. So I thought that was quite funny.
Do you think it might be almost like a backhanded comp because it's the godson as opposed to like the illegitimate grandson or something like that? There's no blood. Does that matter? There's no blood.
Well, exactly. The fact that he had the option of refusing my godson status, but he accepted it.
I like that answer.
You can choose your friends, you can't choose your family.
And you certainly can't choose your godchildren. Brilliant.
Yeah, I do know. The thing is, the problem is people often connect me to Warhol. I mean, I was very interested in Warhol. He's not probably my prime influence, but he's definitely a very important figure. But it's probably a classic situation. If I were to have met him, I probably would say, "Oh God, he was so pretentious. I didn't like him at all." But I mean, he was a great character and a very influential artist, obviously in the 80s and the pop movement, let's say. But yeah. Well, he was also, funnily enough, he also painted quite a few lobsters, or silkscreened quite a few lobsters. Because I obviously, being a lobster, I obviously connect to lobsters that are featured in art history. It's one of my interests.
You did
so
say
you did also tick that box.
You said, "I became an artist when I became a lobster." That's going to be on your tombstone. You do realize that?
I know. I kept meaning to design my tombstone because obviously it's one's ultimate sculptural contribution that one can make. I was thinking about making like a granite lobster, like a stone lobster in the shape of a chair, so people could sit on it.
Oh, I like that.
Because I did create a lobster chair, so I thought the tombstone could be a sort of a spin-off of my lobster chair. You've
done shark chairs and lobster chairs and stuff. Yeah, no, I like that idea because you're getting a one-upmanship on Spike Milligan when he said.
Yeah, because there is this cool dialogue of cool graves, basically. Like Oscar Wilde's grave in Paris. I mean, the Jim Morrison's, like that sort of, the ritual of visiting a grave.
Well, I mean, Spike Milligan famously said, Oscaliga, that I told you I was sick. That was what he had on his tombstone. But if you have a seat, that's a great idea. People can come along and sit on you.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Far better company when I'm no longer here.
Well, you won't mind. So questions for you. Have you ever eaten lobster?
No, never.
Okay.
Never tasted lobster.
Do you have
I think if I had, it would discredit my status as a lobster a little bit.
Well, you could be
like
a cannibal.
Eating a human who just tasted human. I think it's a bit wrong.
Have you any lobster friends?
Well, I do attract people that are fanatical about lobsters. In the last couple of days of my exhibition at Saatchi, I actually attracted a lobster cult who dressed as lobsters, came in and started worshipping my artwork in the exhibition. And so some other artists that happened to be visiting the show at the time sent me videos of these guys like praying and like bowing, and I thought, so amazing.
You've arrived.
That's it. It was like an epiphany. I was like, oh my God, it's obvious. An artist needs a cult. It's a necessary crutch to the insecurity of one's ego.
Brilliant. I love it. I just hope they don't do nasty cult things and just do nice cult things.
Yeah, exactly. Like friendly cult. But I think these guys, their manifesto was quite positive. It was very much, sticking up for minorities and all sorts of stuff. So spreading vibes of love. So I did suddenly get worried thinking, oh my God, what if it's a negative cult? And that I become but luckily they seemed to have a positive message going on.
It's really cool. Have you heard about Irish lobsters?
No, you should tell me about Irish lobsters.
I love the story. It's a little joke. This American couple, they're in a seafood restaurant and they see a tank of lobsters, and the tank is quite low and the lobsters are quite big, and they call the maitre d' over and they said, are you not worried that the lobsters will climb out and make a break for freedom? And the guy said, just watch. And they watched, and during the night the big lobster got to the very close to the top, and as he was about to get out, the rest of the lobsters all grabbed him and pulled him back in again. That's Irish lobsters. So anyway, they're not the lobsters that we want to follow at all. We want the nice ones that endorse
Well, thank you. Yes, that's
diversity and inclusiveness and all those good things. So, okay, Lobsters. This is like sorry. One last question on Lobsters in general. Have you seen the film? Have you been influenced by the?
Yes, of course. Yes. The only thing I'm slightly pissed off that they took my title for a movie, so I have to clarify that with my movie. I'll have to be a real lobster movie or lobster movie brackets, which actually features lobsters. Because I think there was a lot of it was advertised lobster, but there wasn't a lobster.
No. You might get Colin.
It was a great film. It was a great film.
It's
very popular. When I've had my show in a museum in Moscow, funny enough, they asked me a lot about the lobster movie. What's interesting is I'm like a lobster litmus test. So when I go to different countries, in a way, there's different cultural interest in lobsters, or it creates different connections.
It's interesting. No, I love this. Okay, so you've Lobsterland, Lobsteropolis. I've been practicing saying that word. And I want to go to the tech side because in 2020 you had your first digitally viewpoint. You had those medical robots, so people could get involved in the show. They couldn't be there. They could like sign into, and they were like a little screen on wheels, like those, and so people could then view your art using those
as robots.
So when did you get into? I mean, that was obviously a huge step forward with tech, and tech is obviously important to you. So we're here today because we're talking about your June 30th fully digital exhibition in Decentraland. So what got you first? Was it blockchain, metaverses, Bitcoin? What dragged you into this world?
So I guess the fact that over the last few years I've developed this avatar, this sort of persona as a lobster, it seemed like a very logical creative evolution that I would create a world for my lobster. If I had this personified lobster, then it was, and I've always believed in this idea that art is creating a world. Like you create a language, an identity, a DNA, a way of looking at things. Like think of artists creating sculpture parks. Even a painting. It's a proposition of a world, a view of a world, another reality, let's say. So I've always been very interested in this idea of like having my own world, my own reality. And so with the evolution of the lobster then came the creation of Lobsterland and Lobsteropolis, which has been evolving in my work over the last few years. So I have been already building my digital world Lobsterland. Initially I did it for an AR platform, so that a VR platform, so that I could have virtual reality interaction of people being able to go into my Lobsterland world during my exhibition. So I started building this digital world for that, and it's something that over the last 2 years in a lot of my shows I've had this either on digital screens or on virtual reality. I've had this opportunity for people to come into this lobster world and slightly bend the boundaries of perception of what the art is, trying to create a more holistic malleable, interactive art experience. And so with the rise, in a way, to be honest, even from last year when the lockdown occurred, that I really felt it was the perfect opportunity to really be pushing my digital world, because when people couldn't travel and stuff, then obviously the power of art to work digitally and had a more captive audience than ever. And so I was then like developing more the virtual world, but I hadn't really finished it. And then as of the beginning of this year, with the rise of the NFTs and everything, it just further incentivized me to bring it online, because in a way it just makes it then accessible for people who are not just at my exhibition. Because the beautiful thing about an online something is that it's globally accessible, and it's ultimately connected to people, because it's very easy to enter, and it doesn't mean you have to be in a particular city or something. So, and that's the beauty of it. This phenomenon of creating interaction and experience and a new dynamic of social behavior. And I think for me, that's part of the phenomenon of creating new art, is creating this new phenomenon of pushing the possibilities for art. So for me, the Second Life platform seemed like the perfect way of bringing my digital world, my art world, in a way, to life. And so then I started researching like the best possible platforms, and I felt that Decentraland was the most easy to use, accessible platform, and it felt like it was constantly evolving, and like it's soon going to be viewable through the phone, and I think soon there's probably going to be virtual reality headset interlinks into it. So I think that very soon I could imagine Decentraland becoming the closest we have to a sort of a global metaverse where realistically loads of artists and musicians and thinkers and creatives and young aspiring individuals can go and find, like, live some weird crypto dream where the American dream is resold to avatars.
Mm. Well, I mean, people have questioned before, the use of a metaverse and NFTs, which we'll get to in a minute. But of course, we spend so much of our time online. Why are we not in a world, and why, if you can't
Of
travel?
course, and if you think about the phenomenon of everything, everything is abstract. Ideas, the value of everything is abstract. We connect it to materiality, but ultimately, the true value lies in the story, the narrative, the idea, the provenance. So we're talking about actually a lot of, like, I would say, a lot of the percentage, or the pie chart of value in things is mostly in the concept. Now, obviously, it doesn't take away from the physicality of paint, texture of a certain paint on canvas and stuff, but ultimately, the Holy Grail is the idea. The Holy Grail is the narrative, the story. And as you say, today we live very much in the prism of digital reality, and everyone is addicted to their phones, and the phones, for good and bad, are very much, cyborg part of our identities today. And so, that again, that comes in both good and bad. It comes with amazing democratic possibilities, and it comes with also huge potential challenges and problems. But I think, creatively speaking, to create new phenomenon, you look to try and push the boundaries of things, and yes, we could regress back to cave painting, because ultimately, doesn't mean to say that cave painting can't be extremely profound as a human expression, but ultimately, as a creative person, the opportunity to create a new phenomenon somehow, with the possibilities for art, for me, is like something that art has always strived to create a new chapter of possibility for it.
The idea is everything.
Sense of
So,
freedom that is interesting.
so you have in Decentraland, you have like 57 land plots. How big is that? Is
Yeah.
that the size of London?
Well, no, not quite. Sadly, I'd like to be, but it's the biggest we could possibly get, and it's the largest single artist venture on Decentraland. So it's a very large amount of land, and I was able to do an agreement with Vegas City, who are the biggest sort of landowners in Decentraland, to be able to make that possible. Because I guess for me, the idea of just having a gallery or one building didn't really fit the concept of an immersive world. So I needed enough land that I was able to, in a way, park my own land inside Decentraland. So in that way, it's a bit of a theme park,
And
or
what
it's a
do you
bit of
have? You have a museum, you've got a
so I've
record
got a
shop.
museum, I've got a bank, a university, a concert venue. I've got a record label, Lobsterland Records, which I've done collaborations with Devo,
I got to get
and
to that
also
in a
I'm
minute.
working on
Yeah.
one with the B-52s as well. So basically, I am, very interested in this hybrid of art and music, and again, something that's always inspired me. And so I think that this potential platform was a real opportunity to push the boundaries for me of what could be done with that. So yeah, so overall, I basically just wanted to create a enough of an experience so it bends people's imagination a little bit, like the idea that they're going into my actual world and they could hang out in a diner and chat to people. They could go to the museum, they could go to a supermarket, they could go have a bank, they could get money, they could go to a casino. I have a casino as well. There's a live concert venue for avatar bands to perform live and stuff. So it was definitely my, like, if I was creating an art village basically, or an art town. And I have some skyscrapers, which later on the line, I like the idea that I could let other artists rent floors in there or contribute somehow to the conversation.
It's amazing. As you said, I said at the start, the 30th, it's going to be the launch of Lobsteropolis. I've been practicing
Yes.
it so much, it's got out of my head. Lobsteropolis. But you're backed by big names. So you have, like, Charles Saatchi is a backer of yours, and Simon Dupuy he's going to be doing a live auction on the 30th. That's pretty cool. And just tell me, you mentioned earlier Devo, the band. How did you meet them? What's the connection
So
there?
I've always just been obsessed with Devo. I've always loved their music. I mean, when I was growing up, I was obsessed. I mentioned with this art music crossover from far back as the Ballet Russe to more contemporary pop music from even the punk movement. The Sex Pistols and Malcolm McLaren, and then Devo are an amazing example of a band brand, art label, art band, you know, hyper ironic, massively engaging on the limits of consumption and branding, and like, and the influence of that on bands and music. And so for me, they were a very important band, and slightly overlooked. And so I
How did you meet them? How did you find them?
so I just had contacted them online, actually.
So you reached out to them online?
Yeah, so I just reached out to them online, and then I was, you know, I was thinking of what we could do together that would be interesting. And I guess then this NFT thing came along, and I just felt actually that could be a perfect opportunity of mixing the idea of, you know, my visual art with their audio identity and music. So
and I suppose it's not often they're approached by a lobster.
No, quite, exactly. And I think that the red energy dome hats was a natural sort of synergy somehow. It felt like the Lobster and Devo, I know each other.
So just finally then, just to look on the NFTs, you're already producing NFTs on Super Rare.
Yeah.
What is it that appeals to you about NFTs?
Well, I think this opportunity to create a democratic platform for video art, because video art had always been had never really been able to have in any way any commercial viability or platform like painting or sculpture has had, and then being supported by the art industry and system and the auction houses and stuff. Video art's always been sort of slightly under the table, but yet obviously a very profound art form undeniably of the 20th and 21st century. So for me, the NFT in a way gave ground and platform to video and digital art. I mean, as a painter, I'm heavily inspired by and I very much do use video 3D software in the creation of paintings, because for me it's that hybrid of new technology to create a new possibility in visual painting language, which I find really interesting. And so for that same reason, I'd spent a lot of time working on 3D modeling and digital elements, digital assets in a way. So it felt the NFT was the perfect platform to take this new dynamic of artistic expression and give it a platform. And in a way, yes, that exploded to begin with. And I think that, you know, which in a way was, I think, probably just because of the huge enthusiasm that suddenly people realized that there was a new genre being born. Ultimately, obviously, a lot more people are doing it now, but I think there is no question that it's here to stay as a part of the pie of what art is. It's definitely now a significant slice of that.
So if people want to come to the launch on the 30th of June, where do they go?
So there's a link, and of Decentraland. They can either just go to the general Decentraland homepage, and then they can log in, create an avatar profile, which without needing to, you know, pay for anything, or they can come in as a guest, and then they come to Vegas City and they find Lobsterland, which is pretty hard to miss if you go to Vegas City. Yeah, and then they can go in and interact and explore the world. Yeah, and I'm pretty excited about the 30th, because it's a bit like when I did the robot opening. The great thing about creating a new idea of something where we're pushing the boundary a little bit is the result, the performative element of when it actually happens is pretty amazing, because you never quite know what's going to happen. You know, it's a bit like putting some random things together in a chemistry department, class. Is sometimes there's a sort of there can be magic that can happen, which you don't quite, spontaneous things happen. And I think that's something pretty amazing about that.
Thank you so much for your time, Philip. It's been absolutely amazing. Philip Colbert.
Amazing.
I thank you indeed. And I'm looking forward to June 30th in Decentraland. And
amazing. Well, thank you so much. It's so nice
Lobsteropolis.
to connect, Jillian. Exactly. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you indeed.